we made the decision that we would ask the question, what does success look like for our family member?
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. At Tap the Potential, we know that you want to be freed from the constant demands of your business. In order to do that, you need a business that supports your life. The problem is you have a cash-sucking business taking over your life, leaving you frustrated and discouraged. We believe work supports life, not the other way around. We understand you're paying a team and you're still having to do it all. There should be accountability. It shouldn't be this hard, which is why through our proprietary coaching system, we help thousands of business owners just like you have more time for what's important to them and grow profit by 300 to 800%. Here's how we do it. First, take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Next, meet with our success team lead to debrief your results. Then, join our Better Business, Better Life program. By the end of your first year with us, you will have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had before. So take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment so you can stop working so hard for so little return. Take your life back. Profit designers, today Mike and I are bringing you a fascinating conversation that we got to have with Alex Schauer about family business and all the complex dynamics that go into successfully running a business with family members and still being able to have enjoyable time together at Thanksgiving. Alex runs a business with her family, and she shares her story, what she has learned, and she shares with us how she uses that personal story and her personal experience to serve her clients through her company. She specializes in working with business leaders to increase their revenue. On the day she married her husband, she also became an integral part of their family's manufacturing company. She learned firsthand the challenges family business leaders face working with siblings and parents, while also growing a thriving business. Over the past 2 years, she's helped over 100 businesses create a marketing strategy to increase their revenue. She especially loves working with family businesses to help them communicate their marketing message without telling the story about how their grandfather started the company. So with that, let's dive in. So Alex, welcome to the Profit by Design podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
We have such a juicy topic, and Mike and you and I were all talking before we hit the record button here about family business. And there's so many family businesses. I know at Tap the Potential, we encounter a lot of our clients have family in the business or families as co-owners. There are all kinds of challenges. Myself as the business psychologist, I really enjoy bringing my background. I used to do family therapy. That was one of my fun things that I did in graduate school is I actually worked on weekends so I could do family therapy.
Wow.
And learn that. I didn't realize that was going to come to serve me at this stage in my life. But it is a real issue of just the complexity of relationships in family-based business. You have a marketing company, and you specialize in marketing to increase the revenue for family-based businesses. So tell us a little bit about your company, and then how did you get into your interest with family business?
So I do work with businesses who are looking to increase their revenue. A lot of the businesses I work with have been in business for a while, but they are just looking to either go into a new market or maybe they've plateaued at some point and we need to reignite their revenue. And so that's what I help them do. But the way that I actually got into this is through our family's manufacturing company. I married into a family manufacturing company when I married my husband, Eric. And, it may be the most interesting way to jump into a marriage is to also jump into business. And so we navigated that the first year of what it looks like to be both in business and married with each other. And so we worked on the business together, like I said, and kind of came in right away. And so one of the places that they really needed help was in marketing. And so I kind of stepped into that role and became the one to really find creative ways to market our company and our product. And we actually used the story brand framework to market that company. And once we launched the new website with the clearer message, we increased revenue 417% just right out of the gate. So it was a huge increase in revenue. Yes. And which I kind of jokingly say at times, I became the favorite child at that point. And so once we had done this, everybody was a lot happier with me, but there was a lot of risk. And we talk about this in family business a lot. These are the people you sit across the table from at Thanksgiving. And so, there's a risk for taking risks in the business because it can affect your relationships with your family as well. But thankfully that risk was something that went over really well. And from there, other businesses that saw what we had done just began to ask, what did you do? How did you increase revenue? And so I started on the side working with businesses as well. So that's really my background. And so the family business was pretty instrumental in me starting my own business and marketing as well.
Wow. So there's another layer of complexity that I'm aware of when you talk about risk as the favored child now in the family that grew the revenue for the business that much. That is a whole different business at that point. So all the systems that probably weren't fully developed at the point that you exploded their revenue for them, that places a lot of strain on the business. Was that a challenge?
We were actually in a really great position because my father-in-law is actually systems driven 100%. And so we were in a very fortunate situation where we had the systems in place to be able to handle that growth that came. It still continues to grow to this day. It's very strong. We've doubled twice, I believe, in the last few years. I need to get my numbers right. My husband is the numbers guy. But the point is our systems were in place. And I think that that's what helped us to be able to make that kind of growth in revenue. And that's what I say to a lot of clients when I'm working with them is I do the research and make sure that we have the systems in place before we start adding fuel to the fire. But at every level of business, you're going to start working on the system. So that's what we're doing. Even now, as we speak, I just got off the phone with my husband and he said, these are the systems that I'm fixing today. But thankfully they had some, we didn't have as many struggles as a lot of businesses would have just because my father-in-law is so systems driven.
Yeah. So one of the things that you highlighted in your bio was about, nobody cares that your grandfather started the business. Really what they care about is that the product or service, provides a solution to their problem, which I think is so interesting because when folks have family businesses, they really put a lot of emphasis on that, in their marketing. So, what is your experience with that? And why do you think that, really that's kind of secondary, although a lot of family businesses think that it's really a primary marketing, tactic?
Yes. And that's really what we focused on for years. And honestly, I took a lot of pride in starting my conversations like that. I'm very proud of my father-in-law, the business that he's built. And so when someone would ask me what I did, I would just automatically respond, well, my father-in-law. And then I would go into his story really instead of the story of how we were helping our customers. And what we really shifted is saying, my father-in-law came up with this product. I mean, it's a really cool story. It started in the garage and they were shipping out of the garage for a long time and then they moved. So I would go into all of those things and people would just kind of glaze over like, that's I have nothing to add to this conversation.
Can you share with us the story that you tell now, the better version? And I want to give a little context. So Alex and I met at the Story Brand Conference. Tina Smith introduced us. Both of you are story brand guides, and Tina had actually been recommending you to several of our clients who are family-based businesses for help with their marketing, because we were hearing a little bit of my grandfather started the business kind of stories. And so story brand, what I took from the workshop, and I'm sure you can elaborate much better on this than I can, but really we need to be positioning ourselves as the guide. And so I would love if you would share the new story. And then maybe after you share it, could you, from a story brand perspective, point to how this is different and better and more effective than the old story?
Sure. So if someone asks me now what I do, and I'm speaking specifically about our company, I say, those metal protruding coat hooks that stick out from the wall that are in a lot of schools and churches, well, they're really dangerous when they're hung at eye level. So Hang Safe Hooks creates a flat profile, virtually unbreakable coat hook that makes schools and churches safer where kids learn. And so as you'll see, I started with the problem, and the problem for us is that the metal protruding coat hooks, those are actually very dangerous. They break often. There are a lot of problems in schools because they exist there. My father-in-law, which this is going against actually came up with a flat profile design, and it's that design that's in, thousands and thousands of schools now, and make it safer for the schools, for the kids where they play. So I presented the problem, but I also presented the solution instead of talking about the fact that my father-in-law invented this safety product, and it would just be very confusing. But the first thing you thought about whenever I said those protruding metal coat hooks, what came into your mind?
I saw my daughter poking her eye out.
Exactly.
And now whenever you walk into some place and you see those on the wall, you're going to think about the fact that they're very dangerous.
Yes, thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah, what more anxiety to keep me awake at night as a parent? No, I'm kidding.
Well, and now you're just going to, every place you go, you're going to be like, those need to come off the wall. And we need to get Hang Safe Hooks in here so that we can have a better solution for where our kids play.
Well, the other thing that I don't know if you picked up on it, but I heard Mike immediately when you said, those hooks, and he said, yeah, like he was drawn into the story right away and engaged. And like, if you would have just stopped talking right there, we would have both been like, it's hanging, waiting on every word, hanging, what happens next?
Exactly. And honestly, I think that it does two things when you start talking about the problem of your customers, which is what we did, not just on, our marketing material and on our website, but we actually changed the script internally within our family. And we all knew that's what we were really fighting against from the beginning. We all knew that our product was the solution for a lot of schools, and it's turned out it solves even more problems than we even anticipated in the beginning. But once we started having that internal conversation of what are we fighting against as a family, it's amazing the unity that happened, where we weren't necessarily just pointing to my father-in-law and saying, oh, look what he did. We were saying, look what we're doing to make schools safer.
So, and this is a big part of the story brand script, is there needs to be an enemy or a villain. And so you use the word fighting against. So what is the villain in your story?
For us, the villain really is the protruding coat hooks The
protruding coat hooks. Okay. So psychologically, you just described a very interesting phenomenon that is very important for family business. It's important for all business. As soon as we have a villain that we're fighting against on the outside, we have to come together. Like that pulls people together. But if we don't clarify what that villain is, we start fighting internally and we become our villains to each other.
Right. I love it. Donald Miller actually wrote in his book, Building a Story Brand, he said, the day we stop losing sleep over our business's success and we start losing sleep over our customers' success is the day our business will grow again. And I completely resonate with that. And it's exactly what we felt as a family. Our business, we were in a good spot. We were growing pretty steadily, but that when we stopped focusing on the story being about my father-in-law and how great he is, and when we started really focusing on the story that our customers were experiencing day in and day out, that's when we saw the growth. That's when 417% growth just happened in 4 months' time, kind of thing. So,
wow. So you work with a lot of family businesses. And what are the statistics on family business in the United States? There's a lot of them.
there is. One of the ones that we were talking about before, that I think the number has decreased slightly, but in this high 70 to low 80% range is how many businesses in the US are family owned. And, one of the things that I've noticed, like I said in the beginning, I married into this business. And so I was looking for, and I tend to be a researcher by nature. I've got to find the solution. I've got to know how to navigate this, all of those things. And I didn't find anything that really pointed me in a solid direction that said, this is how you navigate being married into a family business, or even this is how you have a successful business and working relationship when you're working with your brother. And so I feel like there's a gap in the marketplace right now between the education level for family businesses, and yet so many businesses in the US are family owned.
I agree. It's just not real clear. We see it with our clients. There's a lot of confusion of how do I navigate this? And what we see at Tap the Potential is I have this family member. I don't want to upset them, but I don't know what role to put them in the business. That is a common theme, and the feeling that I need to design a role that will fit this family member, but it just doesn't quite fit. Or family members who don't want to follow policies and procedures, and team members get frustrated because they feel like the family gets special treatment. Those are the big issues. The other one that I see is business partners who are family members, and it's not working well. And one will have one set of values, the other has another set of values. And at Tap the Potential, we are like solid on, you have to have your immutable laws for your business, and they have to be common. Everybody has to be on the same page. If they don't, if the immutable laws are not aligned, that person cannot stay in the business because it's a cancer in the business.
It really is. You're right. Yeah, I say one of the things that we did early on that I feel like is one of the best things that we've done is we made the decision that we would ask the question, what does success look like for our family member? So outside of just, what their role may be in the company, I think that that's probably one of the, whenever there's this disconnect, like you said, what role do I put them in? I think it's because the question hasn't been asked of that person, what does success look like for you?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And it really changes the script, because instead of us talking about, we're all in this for the business success, which we are, and we do want to fight for our customers, all of those things are very true. But more than that, we're concerned with who our family members are becoming in the process of working for the business. If it's not going to propel them into a future success, personally, professionally, then it's not the right place for them. And, I love Good to Great. I love the idea of having the right seat on the bus, that whole concept. But I feel like in family business, we have to ask that question often. Can my family member reach their full potential in this role in the company? And sometimes that answer is no.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you say that, one of the things that we advise is getting the clarity on the vision of the company, getting the role chart in place around the sweet spot of the business. And so we have clearly defined roles and that support the sweet spot. And then coming in and asking this question of what does success look like for this family member, that provides the information to then compare. Here's what success looks like. Here's where the company is headed. Is this a viable relationship? Is this going to serve you? And that creates the opportunity for the family member to be at choice rather than other family members having to say, oh no, this is a bad fit. We have to fire you or whatever, which creates chaos.
Right.
The other thing I find interesting is that, the mindset, like if you go back to what we were talking about before, my grandfather started the business and, blah, blah, blah. And that becomes really the, a huge part of not only the marketing, but also the thinking and the mindset of the business in general. And I know from my own experience, when I had, family members and brother-in-law and sister-in-law and all these people working for the company, I almost felt like I had these extra badges on my jacket, that when I went and spoke to a customer, I would say, well, my wife does the accounting, my brother-in-law does this, my sister-in-law does this, right? And if you're out of that mindset, right, that not only from a marketing message mentality, but also the mindset of, I'm not going to give my brother-in-law or sister-in-law a pass because I think me saying that to my customer is more important than them really either performing, the job properly, or like you were just saying, have them in a role where they're going to excel, right? So there's almost like a fundamental mindset within some entrepreneurs that they'd rather just keep saying, well, my wife works with me, or I work for my dad, or my brother-in-law works for me, and just keep it as a huge excuse.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's something we've even gone away from. I mean, if you read any email from any family member, all of our last name is Schauer. So it's pretty obvious that we're all from the same family, but our communication is so focused now on the customer and their success that we don't find we have to even explain who we are in relationship to the business as far as ownership. It's more, what are we going to do to serve you the best that we can? And I think that there was a second thing that you said earlier, Sabrina. You said that one of the problems was they didn't have clear roles. And then the second problem, and I'm going to get this correct, but that there weren't immutable laws. Basically, they could do whatever they wanted to, and because their last name was a family name, then they kind of got away with it. And I find that very interesting and true at times. I will say, I think so just so that you understand the structure of our business, my husband now is the lead of the business. He leads the business. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are still involved in the day-to-day operations. My brother-in-law and his wife are involved in the day-to-day operations. I'm involved in the business from a marketing standpoint. And so everyone has involvement. And I think in our situation, what we found is, a couple of things. We tend to overcompensate maybe for our last name. And so instead of feeling like I deserve something because this is my last name, it's more of from a position of, this is my last name, but I need to perform really well in this position. So maybe some personality things that cause us to act that way. But either way, I feel like it serves the business well, and we serve our employees well at that point.
That, Alex, I want to comment right there.
Sure.
That sounds like an immutable law. In your family,
it may be, yes.
We overserve and focus on the client's needs. And maybe it's because we're a family-based business. We're intentionally not focusing on our needs, but we're focusing on the client.
Yes, it is that balance, because we do want success for every member, but every member's success also has to serve the company. So it's this balance that we're working with all the time of, does this look like, is this success going to work for you individually and make you the person that you should be? And if so, if it does that, then it's also going to strengthen the business. But if they're not operating in their gifting, if they're not in the right seat, if they don't feel fulfilled every day, it doesn't serve the business. So anyway, it's interesting.
And I interrupted you. You had another thought.
My other thought was, we do have some written, I wouldn't say they're rules, but they're communication guidelines within our family. And so one of those rules, just to give you an example, I say rules in air quotes here because, they're just written out and we agree on them. But that if, for instance, I gave you the outline, my husband's in leadership technically over my brother-in-law and his wife and my in-laws at this point. So everyone kind of answers to him. So the kind of rule in our family is, if my brother-in-law has a problem with the decision that my husband made, instead of going to my in-laws and saying, Eric made this decision and I don't necessarily agree with it, that he goes directly to Eric and say, this is my problem. Because what happens is we default to going to our parents, right? Like,
yep. Very true.
Yeah. You grow up in this family and you're just like, well, I'm going to go to mom and dad and just tell them and they'll take care of it for me. But mom and dad aren't going to be involved every day in the business forever. And so they need to be able to learn how to communicate with each other and bring each other together and say, hey, I don't like the decision that you made here. These are the reasons why. And it's been a huge thing for me, but that's just one, or for our business, but that's just one of the kind of rules that we've set in place, that we go to each other if there's a problem.
Yeah. So just to put this in terms of family relationship theory, when you're dealing with adult family members, we look like adults, but we are interacting with our families from our 3 to 5 year old selves and the rules that we learned way back when. And so I love how you guys have been intentional to clarify we need to operate with these rules. And this is how we will communicate in that direct communication. Like, we're not going to run to mom and dad. And even if it's not mom and dad in families, it's real easy to split family members and say, I don't like what you said, so I'm going to go talk to Joe about it. And then Joe's going to be mad at you. And, it's in kind of that ganging up.
And then whenever your spouses are involved too, then you have that, well, you had the conversation about the brother-in-law behind closed doors. We don't even allow really that to happen. We just say, we've got to have some clear boundaries. If Eric comes to me and said, Kyle did this today and it really bothered me, I say, well, what did he say about it whenever you talked with him? Because it's not productive conversation and it's not productive for the business.
So I know we're talking about communication. And you and your family have done a lot to work on how you communicate with each other based on personality types. At Tap the Potential, we do that with our clients. We use a tool called the People Map, and they identify the personality strengths and Achilles heels. And it's amazing when you just have that understanding of the other person has a different personality. They're speaking a different language than you. And it's important that we speak their language rather than necessarily our language. I would love to hear you talk about your experience and how that level of understanding of the personalities in the family has helped the communication.
Absolutely. We went to the Indiagram for help with our personality traits, and it's been really beneficial for us. One of the first things that we learned is, my brother-in-law and I have the exact same personality trait. So we are both ones on the Enneagram. And if you don't know what that means, it means that we're both perfectionists. We know what the right thing to do is. And we also have this inner critic in our heads that's always just kind of making sure that we're doing the right thing. And so when we both realized that, it was kind of like this moment where we're like, oh my goodness, I get you. I understand everything that's going through. So when Eric said that to you earlier, that really crushed you or something along those lines. And so it was kind of like this moment where we all said, I don't get that because that may not be my personality, but now I get why you made that decision. So my husband is a performer, and he's very into competition, needs to win all the time kind of thing. And so understanding that helped us to understand he's just trying to win here. This isn't a personal attack on Kyle or I. My sister-in-law is a 9, so she is a peacemaker. And for her, and one of the things that actually came out of learning about the Enneagram, for her, she wants to keep the peace at all cost. And so we actually went to her after we realized she was a 9, because what can happen with 9s sometimes is they can default to keep the peace with, the person closest to them. So a spouse or a family member. And what happens is if they're not in the position where they want to be over time, they kind of resent that person for that. And so when we first realized it, Eric and I both were alarmed a little bit because we were like, is she making the decisions to be here be a part of the company because she is making the peace, or is she here in the company because she loves it and wants to be a part of it? So we actually went and had the really difficult conversation. We said, what does success look like for you? And we allowed her to answer that openly, and it could include or not include the business. And her success did not look like being in the business long term. So she's actually in a moment of transitioning where she's taking on some other responsibilities outside of the business and doing her own thing so that she can really develop the success that she wants out of life. And so honestly, it was helpful for her and for all of us to come to the conclusion, we want you to come in this business and feel like it's strengthening you. We don't want you to come in this business and feel like it's taking away from you and who you want to be. And so that was probably the biggest thing that came out of understanding the personalities, other than the day-to-day communication.
I think that is such an empowered place to have those conversations from. And a great resolution is coming through that, where all parties are going to be in a better place because these conversations have happened.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
How did your family arrive at that level of open communication, right? Because I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to listen to this and they're going to say, I'm scared to even bring this up.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
It didn't always look like this. We've been working on communication for 10 years now. So we're probably in the healthiest place it's ever been right now. And it really took us every single day coming into the office. And honestly, there were times where we kind of had to, just to be quite frank, kind of battle out for what we felt like needed to happen for the company. But I will say that there was a small season many years ago where my husband and I actually stepped away from the business. And we did that to create health in the business. And so I really would say to anyone who, if you're in that season where you're battling it out every day and you feel like it's not going to get any better, I really think that there's really only two options. The one is to continue to fight for communication and go in and say, look, you want success, I want success in all of this, and we've got to figure that out together. Or you have to graciously walk away. And sometimes that looks like a season. Sometimes that looks like starting something, completely else or taking on a different career path. But I feel like we all made the decision that, and I think that actually, I think you say this often, that business should serve life, right?
Yes. Work supports life, not the other way around. That business
Yes.
is family and our individual well-being.
Yes. And I completely agree with that. And that's what we had to come to the decision too, that we wouldn't sacrifice our relationship as a family, our life together for the sake of the business.
It's such a critical point. And one of the things that I talk to clients about a lot when they're hesitating to even open up this can of worms in their family and say some things are not working, we really need to find a better way, is I frame it from the context of this conversation that you're going into is because you care so deeply about your family and your family member and your own well-being. And if you can hold that in mind as you go into the conversation, the business is always going to be secondary, but at the same time, or I should say, and at the same time, that business exists to support the family.
Exactly. My husband always says life is too short to be in conflict with our family members. And I completely agree with that. It just is. And so we prioritize those conversations. And we also separate which conversations are business related, which conversations are personal. At Christmas time, I don't remember having one conversation about business, which has taken us a long time to get there. But at Christmas, we enjoyed each other together, our families, opening gifts, the whole thing, and didn't talk about business once.
So this is very important. We have husband wives as co-owners in businesses.
Yes.
And that's a very important rule that when you're home together, you are home.
Right.
There's no conversation about the business. If there is, like that you work from home, there needs to be a designated meeting happening.
Yes.
Regular work hours. It's not going to be happening at 9:00 at night when you're tired and now you're going to have a big fight because everybody's worn out and they're trying to tackle this big issue.
Because you can't rest.
Right.
If you don't walk home and have walk home, if you're not walking in the door of your home, I don't know if you walk home, and having a sanctuary where you can rest your mind, you're not going to make productive decisions the next day. And so if we have a conversation with some of our family members outside of business hours that is business related, we always say we want to talk about the business during this meeting. And that's what this is about. And then if we're just going out and having dinner together, we say, this is just to go out and have dinner together. We haven't gotten together in a little while. Do you guys want to have dinner? And so we separate them. So it's very open that, we're either going to talk about the business now or we're not.
I think too, in my own experience and some other people that I know and talk to about, the husband-wife relationship, it's certainly a lot of times the conversations are not even productive, right? So it's coming home and venting about something and complaining. And, I know for years, basically what I did was I just scared my wife to death. Like the way that I would talk or complain or this problem and that problem, she was really just so frightened that everything was going to collapse around us or, there was, me being the dominant entrepreneur and her really just working there for a short stint was really the difference, right? I can still get up in the morning and take the lumps all over again, right? Where the lumps for her were just building and building and building. And then there's like resentment and the relationship suffers and, there's so much pain around it.
There is. And I think that, anything really in life where you want success, I think it takes a lot of intentionality. Eric and I don't know a life without working together. So we kind of joke at times that we're, business partners second and then, parents and everything else after being married. But yes, I can see where your wife would shoulder that burden because that's what we do, right? When we're married, we shoulder each other's burdens and but when it's burdens that we're both carrying, it becomes a really heavy load. So we have to have a place that we rest and say, hey, we're just going to hang out and not talk about business for a while. Even when we're just sitting in silence.
Yeah. And I've learned even as, we haven't worked together, for 10 plus years now. She's back working a corporate job and I'm still, doing my thing. But I've learned through that whole process and actually with working directly with Sabrina, I never talk about work anymore, ever. It's just not a productive part of me having a wholesome relationship with her and then my family and my kids and everybody else. So it's literally doesn't exist.
One of the things that I think is that Mike just alluded to is the stress that we feel as entrepreneurs sometimes about the business. Like our mood fluctuates based on what's going on with the business. And so we can have a really bad mood because we've had a bad day at work. And the temptation is to go home and have the sky is falling conversation. Like, this is terrible. We're going under. And for us,
right,
we're venting. And that's great if your spouse is not involved in the business. And actually, it may not be so great even if they're involved in the business because they feel like, oh my gosh, our livelihood is at stake here. And that's just the entrepreneur needing to vent. So that venting needs to be happening elsewhere. So like at Tap the Potential, we have our Better Business, Better Life program, and our small business owners are in there. And we tell them, this in this group is the place for that. Because we understand the context of those thoughts and where that's coming from. And we also understand it's probably not reality. And so, after you vent, we're going to get you back into reality. But it places a lot of stress on family relationships and marriages, especially when we do that venting in the relationship.
Oh, yeah. And it kind of goes back to your personalities as well. My husband, like I said, is a performer and he's very competitive. He wants to be winning all the time. He has a constant list of things that we could be doing better to keep winning. And so in the beginning, when we first got married, I thought I had to solve all those problems. I thought, okay, he's bringing all these problems to me because I'm the solution to them. And that wasn't the case. He was just kind of going through his to-do list or talking about new ways that we could be winning or whatever it might be. And he had to come to the realization, I can't go through my to-do list in my head with her because she thinks that I'm giving it to her. So that's one thing we don't do now. He doesn't just have a running list without it just being really intentional. This is the next step kind of idea. So it helps tremendously to have those boundaries in place.
So Alex, I imagine as you do the marketing work that you do in your business for your clients, that your understanding of the family dynamics in family-based business is a huge, huge asset in the work that you do for them. So Mike, I know you have some questions for Alex around this.
I do. And talking about marketing seems so boring after the other stuff we were just talking about. So I apologize to the listeners. But on the financial side, we find that business owners struggle because they don't know the numbers and they're not, the reporting, their systems pertaining to that just are failing them. On the marketing and branding side, if you can pick out a couple things that in your experience, business owners are missing and it's greatly affecting their marketability, their branding exposure, their business, increasing revenue and getting to all those good places, what would you kind of identify as some key things that people need to focus on?
The first thing I would say is you have to make sure that the message that you're saying is both clear and consistent. and that it doesn't include your grandfather's story. And that's a hard one. It's going to be, feel free to tell your story to your kids often, but to anyone on the outside, they need to hear the story about how you're going to make their life better. So that would be the first thing, is making sure that's clear. And the second part of that, it's consistent. One problem that I see people make a lot is they get bored with the message themselves. And so they try to change it. But what they're doing is they're actually just creating more noise for people. So instead of being able to say, at Tap the Potential, they help people grow sustainable businesses. And I, was even able to say back to you that work supports life. That alone, what that does is it puts that in my mind that whenever I talk to Dr. Sabrina, I'm talking to someone who understands that, and that's going to help me get to a place where work supports life. And so, but if she added another message in there too about something way out there, she, said, but she's also a family therapist, and that would just add confusion to the message. Like, well, is she helping people with work, or is she helping people with family? And so when you're with your business, you may be bored saying the same message over and over, but your customers are not. And they need to keep hearing it so that they can memorize it and then say it for you. So that's the first thing I would say.
Well, and you are emphasizing what another guest on the podcast just shared, Jamie Mustard, who wrote The Iconist. And he talked about just the overwhelm of media that we are exposed to in marketing messages. And if we feel like we're saying something over and over, our listeners are who we're trying to attract into our business, they're not hearing. We need to say it over and over and over. Redundancy is the way, and consistent redundancy.
I've heard it said that it takes 8 times saying the same message before someone even hears it for the first time, so they can engage with it. So sometimes we just change our message too quickly. We jump ship whenever we're just on the brink of everyone understanding what it is that we do and how we can solve problems for them. So don't jump ship, keep saying the same thing and make sure that it's clear and about your customer. And then the second thing that I'm seeing a lot is there's no real sales process. I've had more and more conversations with people lately that says, we've only been growing by referrals, or we really are putting out fires. We don't have a real way to bring in, we don't have a sales cycle that's automated. We don't have something that's going to bring us consistent revenue. We don't know what next month is going to look like as far as revenue goes. And it's just, the system isn't there. And so, I feel very strongly that a website should be an integral part of your sales process. And that's what I work with a lot of my clients with. It's just not something pretty to put out there in the world just to say, hey, I exist. It needs to be a part of your sales process. And if it's not, then that's where I would start first, is making sure that it's clear, compelling, and that it's bringing people into a sales process.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think too, some of the things that you were talking about, consistency, and you said that word numerous times. And Sabrina and I have talked about, creating habits within the business and, really creating some sustainability there and not giving up, right? Just, taking one item and making it a habit and understanding that, it isn't the sprint, it's the marathon, and you have to be consistent and do it over and over and over. And, you can change it a little bit, but it has to be habit forming. And if you do it for 1 month and then drop it, the outcome isn't really going to be there and the results aren't going to be there.
So, Mike, I am so glad you're circling back to that conversation that we had about consistency, because after that conversation, I was reminded of one of my favorite YouTube videos from Simon Sinek called "Do You Love Your Wife?" And I think that ties in to this conversation nicely. And his point in that video, and we'll link to it in the show notes, his point is that there is not a point in time necessarily where your wife fell in love with you. It was because of an accumulation of the small things that you did that showed thoughtfulness. And it's that repetition of these things over a period of time that leads to, I love my wife. My wife loves me.
That's true.
That's key. And it pertains to marketing, because the first time you heard work supports life, you may not have, it didn't stick. It may have caught your attention, but it didn't stick. But hearing it over and over, I think I'm going to say it at least 8 times before the end of the podcast.
Yes, do it.
I know that work supports life. It is that, is it sticking?
Yes.
It is that repetition.
Yeah.
So, and I am a very good creature of habit. a lot of people, different personality types aren't. And we have on the people map, we have people who are free spirit who like squirrels and, every new idea that comes and every new thing, you get off track. So how do you, in the work that you do as a marketing specialist, how do you make sure that consistency stays there in the message?
In my own business or when I'm working with my clients?
When you're working with your clients, how do you support your clients around that?
Right. Well, we always start with strategy first because I need to understand what their current sales process is, if they have a current sales process, and then what we need to do to create one if it doesn't exist. And, it's hard because there are opportunities that businesses can take today to increase their revenue tomorrow that are maybe not the most popular ones in the conversation right now. So maybe it's not Facebook ads. Maybe it's not even going to the website and fixing that first. It may be that they have an opportunity to present at a trade show next week, and we need to make sure that that's successful. And so it really is dependent on the business itself, where they're at in their business, and then where they need to be going. So I say all that to say, when in our initial conversation, I'm always wondering, where are the sales coming from? Where is the traffic coming from? How do we capitalize on that first and then break into new markets? I think one of my probably pet peeves is when there are ads on Facebook that are saying, Facebook ads are going to grow your business, or Instagram ads are going to grow your business, or LinkedIn ads are going to grow your business. And that all may be true, but it's not the first step to success. And so it's a process of saying, what's our next step that's going to bring about success in our sales? And if there isn't, a constant flow of leads, then we need to figure out where those leads need to come from and do it in an authentic, organic way.
Wow, this has been so enlightening. As we wrap up today, I have a question that I want to throw at you, and that is, what is the one thing that you wish every family member in a family business would do?
I wish that they would celebrate each other. It's so easy to take for granted the people in our lives, especially our family members. My father-in-law, and I'm going back to him a lot on this. I'm like, don't talk about your father-in-law, but I'm going to. But my father-in-law, when he was 20 years old, his father passed away suddenly. And overnight, he was handed the family business. And, the funeral, I think, was on a Saturday. Monday morning, he was delivering fuel to farmers. And he says often how much he wishes he could have learned on the job with his dad, how he wished that he could have gone with him to all of those deliveries to fuel the farmer, to when he delivered fuel to farmers. And it's kind of this thing that resonates with our family, within our family, that it is a privilege to be able to work with one another. And we don't have forever. We don't know what the future is going to look like. And so let's celebrate each other and be each other's biggest cheerleaders and help them become the people that they need to be in this world.
That's great.
Boy, that is a powerful message.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. As we wrap up, you have a gift to share with our profit designers. Would you tell us about that?
Yes. So if you go, and my last name is a little bit complicated. It sounds like Schauer, but it's spelled Schauer. So if you go to schauerco.com/family, I have a PDF there that kind of goes through some of these talking points of things that have worked for our business. But really, I just want to help other businesses have successful communication so that they can grow, not only as a family, but individually.
Yeah, so that PDF is called How to Work Together and Still Love Each Other.
That's right.
A practical guide for a successful family business. And you can get it at schauerco.com/family. So that's schauerco.com/family. And we will link to that in the show notes as well. So you don't have to catch all the spelling if you didn't catch that.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an enlightening conversation.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
If you're like most business owners, you have a cash-sucking business that's taking over your life. After the first year in our Better Business, Better Life program at Tap the Potential, you'll have more time for what matters to you and more money in your bank account than you've ever had. Get started. Take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.